Lysandra kept her eyes on the wine as it poured, dark as blood in crystal. Servants didn't look up, especially not tonight, when every alpha in the Northern Territories had gathered to watch their king choose his queen. She'd perfected the art of being invisible. 6 years serving in Kieran Ashenstrike's court, 6 years learning that being noticed meant danger, but she felt his attention like a brand. "It is my honor," Kieran's voice cut through the celebration, "to announce my engagement to Lady Morrigan Nightshade of the Crimson Veil." The hall erupted. Political alliance sealed. War averted. Lysandra's hand steadied the pitcher, but her wolf, silent for 23 years, suddenly clawed awake inside her chest. She looked up. Mistake. Kieran's eyes locked onto hers across the crowded hall. Dark. Devastating. Hungry in a way that made her breath catch. His knuckles were white on the throne's armrest. A muscle jumped in his jaw. He looked at her like she was something he'd been starving for and hating himself for wanting. 3 seconds. The world narrowed to just that stare. Then Morrigan touched his arm, possessive and claiming, and Kieran wrenched his gaze away like it physically hurt. Lysandra fled. Hours later, Morrigan found her in the servants' corridor. Beautiful, lethal. "I saw how he looked at you. Silk over steel. Whatever you think that meant, you're wrong. You're nothing. And if I catch you near him again, I'll teach you what nothing really feels like." Lysandra said nothing. Silence was survival. Midnight. Beta Kale appeared at her door. "The king has ordered your exile. You leave before dawn. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother once said I'd never reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this, the quiet ones, the forbidden ones, the ones that burn slowly in the dark, deserve to be heard. Subscribe to Midnight Alpha Stories and help turn whispered tales into something that can't be ignored. Now, let's continue. No explanation, no goodbye, just the message. Even wanting her from across a room was too dangerous to allow. Lysandra packed by candlelight, a threadbare cloak, a stolen blade, and one truth she couldn't ignore. The thick wool blanket that appeared on her cot every winter for 6 years, always when she was working late shifts. She'd told herself it was coincidence. Now she knew. He'd been watching, caring from a distance he'd never let collapse, and he'd still thrown her out. Dawn came cold and merciless. Kale escorted her to the border without speaking. She expected contempt, cruelty. Instead, he pressed a bundle into her hands. Warm cloak, flint and steel, dried venison, tools for survival. "From the king," Kale said quietly. "The king exiled me. To protect you. Lady Morrigan made it clear." He could have refused her. Kale's silence confirmed what she already knew. Kieran had chosen the easier path, because claiming her would have meant war with the Crimson Veil, political chaos, admitting what she was to him. Powerful men didn't face consequences, they exiled them. She crossed into the Shadowfen as twilight bled the sky grey, the valley between territories where rogues came to hunt and exiles came to disappear. She tried to make camp but didn't know how to coax flame from flint. Her fingers went numb. She could return. Beg. Trade pride for survival. Then she thought, "I've spent 6 years invisible. If I am going to die, at least I'll die seen." Temperature dropped. Stars emerged, cold and indifferent as his stare had been. Then, a howl. Close, circling, hungry. Lysandra gripped her knife with frozen fingers. She'd never fought anything that could fight back. The howl came again. Closer. She stood, refused to run, and kept her eyes open. The howl belonged to Vera Ironmore, a scarred elder with silver streaking her dark fur and eyes that had seen too much. "You're the servant from Ashenstrike's court, the one he exiled for existing. Word travels that fast. A king choosing political safety over his mate bond. That's the kind of cowardice everyone hears about." 3 months bled into each other like wounds. Vera taught her to survive. To trap, track, kill, to read weather in the wind and fight without honor when honor would get you killed. Lysandra's first kill was a hare. She wept after, hands shaking with cold and something deeper. Her first fire felt like resurrection. Learning to skin prey with bloody capable hands, each lesson carved strength into spaces where weakness had lived. Then came the stag. She tracked it for hours through deep snow, brought it down alone. Standing over it, exhausted and bloodied, something fundamental shifted inside her chest. She'd believed her entire life that she needed someone stronger, that being low-ranked meant being incomplete. But the cold didn't care about bloodlines. Winter didn't respect titles. Survival rewarded skill, not birthright. And she'd learned it without him. The storm came sudden and vicious. Lysandra was checking trap lines when she saw them through the snow. Kieran, 2 guards searching. She could hide. Should. Instead, she stepped into the clearing. Kieran moved toward her on instinct, hand reaching for her cloak to adjust it against the wind, protective habits he'd never allowed himself to act on before. Lysandra stepped back. You don't get to exile me, then play savior when winter makes you feel guilty. His hand hung in the air. His guards stared. An Alpha King refused by the woman he'd thrown away. Lysandra, why are you here? To bring you home. You sent me away. I made a mistake. Mistakes don't undo 3 months of learning I don't need saving. You taught me that by leaving me alone long enough to figure it out. His jaw tightened. Morrigan demanded, your fiancé isn't my problem anymore. Movement. 6 rogues melted from the trees surrounding them. The leader grinned. The exiled servant who survived. And she brought us a king. Lysandra didn't hesitate. She moved left as Kieran went right, 3 months apart, but their instincts still synchronized. His raw power, her learned precision. His dominance, her survival strategy. The rogues expected easy prey. They got slaughter. The pack fled, bleeding into the trees. Silence. Just their breathing, matched despite everything. Then the real storm descended. Kieran's guards suggested retreat. Lysandra read the sky, the weight of clouds, the taste of ice in the air. We won't make it back. There's a cave network 2 miles northeast. Kieran started issuing commands. Alone, Lysandra cut in. The caves are narrow. Your guards take the southern shelter. He looked ready to argue. But she was right, and they both knew it. They took shelter. Alone. The cave forced proximity. They started on opposite walls, but cold was honest. Body heat meant survival. Slowly, inevitably, they moved closer. Lysandra could smell him, cedar and winter and something beneath that made her wolf claw at her ribs, the scent she'd caught in corridors when he'd passed her like she didn't exist. I can smell your fear, Kieran said, voice low in the darkness. I'm not afraid of the storm. I know. The rogue had tried to dominate her. Kieran was giving her space even now, even trapped together. One had seen prey, the other saw someone with the right to refuse. That difference twisted something painful in her chest. Your shoulder's bleeding, he observed. I'll handle it. Let me. No, she held his stare. You don't get to care now. You get to sit there and feel what 3 months of your silence felt like. He nodded, sat back, but his hands shook before he pressed them flat against stone. I felt the mate bond, Kieran said into the dark. 6 years ago, the day you turned 17 and started serving in the hall. Her breath stopped. I felt it, and I said nothing. Why? The word came out broken. Because I'm the Alpha King and you're… What? Beneath you. Too good. Too soft. Too easy to destroy. His voice fractured. And I destroy everything I let myself want. My father had a mate, Kieran said into the dark. My mother. He loved her completely. When she died birthing my sister, he went feral with grief, slaughtered an entire pack, nearly burned Ashenstrike to ash in his madness. So you learned love was a weakness. I learned love turned powerful men into monsters. Lysandra understood then. He hadn't been protecting her from Morrigan or political fallout. He'd been protecting her from himself, from the terror that loving her would unleash the same destruction. But trying to save her from that possibility, he'd wounded her in a different way. Silence could destroy as efficiently as rage. "So you exiled me," Lysandra said, "to save me from being loved too intensely." "Yes. That's the most arrogant thing I've ever heard." He stared. "What? You decided alone that I was too fragile for whatever loving you meant. You decided I'd prefer exile over choice. You shaped my entire future around your fear and called it protection." "I was trying to protect me." "I know." She forced him to meet her eyes. "But protection without consent is just control wearing a kinder mask." The silence stretched taut between them. "If you meant any of this," Lysandra said, "if the bond means anything, prove it." "How?" "Let me choose." "Actually choose. Not return as my secret or stay hidden where it's safe. Give me real options. Then accept whatever I decide." "What do you want?" She steadied her breath. "I want to return. Not as your servant, not as your hidden mate. As your equal. I want to face your council, face Morrigan. And if they reject me, if you lose your throne, then we'll both learn what I'm actually worth to you." "You're asking me to risk everything." "I'm asking you to risk something, which is more than you've done for me yet." Kieran stood, extended his hand. "Then we return, together, your terms." Lysandra stared at his offered hand. Taking it meant war with tradition, with Morrigan, with everything he'd built. Refusing meant survival. She thought of the stag, the traps, 3 months learning she didn't need rescue. She took his hand. They travelled together. Kieran's guards rejoined them, eyes wide, seeing their king walk beside a servant like she mattered. Word moved faster than they did. By the time they reached Ashenstrike's borders, a crowd had assembled. Morrigan stood at the gates with half the council flanking her. "You dare return?" She spoke only to Lysandra. "After exile?" "I was invited." "By whom?" Kieran stepped forward. "By me, as my mate." Silence detonated through the crowd like a shockwave. Morrigan's beautiful face contorted. "You're destroying our alliance for a servant." "I'm claiming the mate bond the moon goddess chose for me. The council will never allow this. The council doesn't grant permission for fate." Draven Blackthorn, eldest councilman, spoke with glacial authority. "You cannot claim a low-born servant as queen. There are laws, bloodline requirements, tradition." Lysandra stepped forward before Kieran could speak. "Then rewrite them." Every eye fixed on her. "You want proof I'm worthy?" Lysandra's voice didn't shake. "Name your trial. But understand, I'm not begging to be your queen for validation. I'm offering to lead this pack because I've spent 3 months learning what survival actually costs. I've learned more about true leadership freezing in the Shadowfen than watching you make decisions from cushioned thrones based on who someone's parents were." She was terrified, but she'd survived winter alone. These were just wolves wearing silk. Draven's smile held no warmth. "Very well. Ancient law permits challenge. You will face Lady Morrigan in the Moon Circle. Combat to submission. Win, and the council hears your petition. Lose. And I leave Ashenstrike forever," Lysandra finished. "Lysandra, don't..." Kieran started. "I accept." Morrigan shifted partially, claws sliding out, eyes burning gold. A trained killer from a warrior bloodline. Lysandra was a servant who'd learned to kill deer. The mismatch was obvious. The fight would begin at moonrise. 6 hours. Vera appeared at the training ground's edge. "Heard you accepted a death match." "I'm consistent, at least." The elder's scarred face showed something like approval. "Morrigan is stronger, faster, professionally trained, but she's never been desperate. You have. Use it." Kieran found Lysandra sharpening her blade an hour before moonrise. Don't try to stop me, she said without looking up. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to tell you that win or lose, I'm choosing you, throne or no throne, council or exile. Easy words when you're not the one bleeding. If I could fight this for you. But you can't. That's the lesson. She met his eyes. For once, you have to stand back and trust I can fight my own wars. I'm terrified, Kieran admitted. Watching you fight while I'm powerless, that's the cruelest thing you've asked of me. Good. Now you understand what 3 months of exile felt like. He nodded slowly. I earned that. The entire pack gathered at the moon circle. Lysandra entered wearing nothing ceremonial, just her hunting leathers and 3 months of learned violence. Morrigan entered armoured, confident, lethal. The first round was devastation. Morrigan dominated. Lysandra hit stone within minutes, bleeding. The crowd whispered. This would end quickly. Second round. Lysandra stopped trying to match Morrigan's power. She used speed instead, dodged, evaded, exhausted her. Third round. Morrigan grew sloppy with frustration. Lysandra saw it, not an opening to kill, but to trap. She used terrain, Morrigan's arrogance, her own desperation. The snare technique Vera had taught her, made for catching predators. Morrigan was caught, any movement risking torn muscle and tendon. Submit, Lysandra said quietly. Never. Then bleed out. Your choice. Morrigan's eyes widened, understanding Lysandra meant it. I submit, she hissed. Strength wasn't being the most powerful wolf present. It was knowing when to fight and when to outthink. Morrigan had relied on dominance her whole life. Lysandra had spent 3 months learning to survive without it. The council approached. Draven spoke. The challenge is satisfied, but this only earns you a hearing. The council must still vote on accepting you as queen. We convene at dawn. Lysandra collapsed, exhausted and bleeding. Kieran caught her. Lysandra stood before the full council, wounds still bleeding through hastily wrapped bandages, facing 12 alphas who believed she had no right to breathe their air. Kieran sat on his throne, silent. He'd promised her this battle was hers alone. Draven Blackthorn spoke first. You've proven you can survive violence, but being queen demands more than that. It requires noble blood, political alliances, the respect of other territories. What do you offer Ashenstrike besides the king's desire? You're right, Lysandra said. I wasn't born to power. I was born to nothing. I served your banquets, scrubbed your floors, existed as furniture until you needed something. And you know what I learned? Silence pressed against the walls. I learned which of you cheats at cards. Which of you beats your mates behind closed doors? Which of you values appearances over integrity? I learned exactly who you are when you think no one worth impressing is watching. Several council members went rigid. You want to know what I offer? Vision. The ability to see what comfort has blinded you to, that this pack's hierarchy is built on birthright, not competence. That you're wasting half your strength dismissing anyone below alpha rank. That you've grown weak because you've never had to survive the way your lowest ranked members do, just to exist. She watched it land, the understanding that she wasn't just a servant, she was a witness to every shameful thing they'd done when they thought she didn't count. One by one, council members voted. Against, 6. 4. 5. Tied. 1 vote left. Draven Blackthorn. I've lived 70 years, the elder said. I've watched alphas lead through violence, through dominance, through manipulation, but I've never seen someone lead through comprehension. He studied Lysandra. You earned this. Not because you won, but because you saw us completely and still thought we deserved your service. That's what queens do. For Jaka 6, against 6. Still tied. Then I invoke my right as Alpha King, Kieran said, rising. My vote breaks ties, and I vote for the woman who taught me that silence is cowardice. That protection without agency is just control. That love without courage is convenient fear. He descended from the throne, knelt before Lysandra in front of every witness. Lysandra, I'm asking, not commanding. Will you stand with me, not as my queen, but as my equal? Every eye burned into her. I'll stand with you, she said, on one condition. Name it. The first law we change, every servant in Ashenstrike receives combat training, education, tools to choose their own futures, not just serve ours. Kieran smiled. Done. The bonding ceremony was set for the full moon. 3 days. That night, a messenger arrived. Morrigan had vanished, and she'd stolen something, forbidden texts about severing mate bonds. Vera recognized the stolen texts immediately. There's a ritual, banned for centuries. If performed during the blood moon, before a bonding completes, it can sever a mate bond permanently. The blood moon is tomorrow night, Cale said, the night before your ceremony. She can't actually break it, Kieran said, can she? If she completes the ritual while you're in range, yes, Vera confirmed. And if the bond severs before it's fully claimed, it can never be restored. You'd feel the pull forever but never complete it. Eternal wanting, never having. Lysandra saw terror flash across Kieran's face, old fear resurfacing. We complete the bond tonight, he said, before she can... No, Lysandra interrupted. What? Kieran, you spent 6 years letting fear control you. If we rush this because we're afraid of what Morrigan might do, we're still letting her make our choices, still running. But if she succeeds, then she succeeds, and we'll survive it. But I won't begin our bond by being controlled by fear of loss. This was what the winter had taught her. Courage wasn't fearlessness. It was choosing right action even when fear had teeth. They tracked Morrigan to ancient ritual grounds, a forgotten stone circle in no man's land. She was there, surrounded by hired rogues. The ritual had already started. Kieran could deploy his forces, could use Alpha Command to stop her. But Lysandra walked forward first. Morrigan. The woman turned, shock crossing her beautiful face. You want to know why you lost? Lysandra asked. Not the fight. You lost him years before I ever entered the circle. I'm highborn, powerful, everything an Alpha King requires. Everything except what he actually wanted. Lysandra stepped into the ritual circle, dangerous, deliberate. You could break this bond. Maybe the ritual works, but even if the mate pull disappears, you still won't have him. Why not? Because he'd choose me anyway. Not because fate decided, because of who I am, and no ritual can sever that. The mate bond wasn't what made Lysandra worthy. It was confirmation, not source. She'd learned that freezing in the Shadowfen, proven it in combat. Now she was teaching Morrigan the cruelest lesson. You cannot force someone to want you. I would have been an excellent queen, Morrigan whispered. Yes, Lysandra agreed. You would have, for someone else, someone who chose duty over desire. But that's not Kieran. Morrigan dropped the ritual components. I hate that you're right. The rogue wolves attacked. They'd been promised payment. Now they wanted blood. But Morrigan fought beside Lysandra and Kieran instead of against them. The battle was swift, vicious. When silence returned, Morrigan nodded once to Lysandra. He never looked at me the way he looks at you. I knew the night he announced our engagement. I just refused to believe it. She left, proud, defeated, no longer enemy. The ceremony was tomorrow. The full moon rose over Ashenstrike. Every pack member assembled. Lysandra stood in ceremonial robes, not servant's cloth, not borrowed elegance. Something new, something she'd chosen. Kieran faced her in the moon circle, this time without violence or blood, just them. I was taught that speaking first demonstrates dominance, Kieran said. So I'll speak second. Lysandra, you first. The crowd stirred, unprecedented. Lysandra smiled. I choose you. Not because fate commanded it. Not because you're powerful or king. I choose you because you learned. You made catastrophic mistakes. You wounded me trying to protect me. But then you did something I never expected. What? You listened. When I told you that you were wrong, you didn't justify yourself. You changed. And that's rarer than any mate bond the moon goddess could forge. 6 years ago, I felt the bond and went silent, Kieran said. I claimed it was duty. It was terror. Terror of becoming my father. Terror of losing control. Terror of losing you. But fear has a way of destroying exactly what you're trying to preserve. He took her hands. I love you. Not silently anymore. Not hidden. I love you openly, publicly, imperfectly. And if you'll have me, I'll spend our lives proving that protection means standing beside you, never in front of you. They marked each other, the traditional mate bite, consensual and mutual. The pack howled recognition. Lysandra became Lysandra Ashenstrike, Queen. A year ago, Lysandra believed her worth came from being chosen. Now she understood. Worth came from choosing yourself first. Being claimed by a king didn't create value. Surviving winter didn't forge strength. Knowing your worth before anyone else confirmed it, that was true power. Everything else was just evidence. 6 months later, Lysandra walked through Ashenstrike's servant quarters. A young Omega watched her pass with terrified, hopeful eyes. Lysandra stopped, knelt. What's your name? Kira, Your Majesty. Do you know what I was before I became queen? A servant? Exactly. And do you know what you are? She extended her hand. Someone learning, someone becoming, someone whose potential has nothing to do with birth rank. Starting next week, every servant under 20 trains with the guards, because your worth isn't determined by bloodline, it's determined by who you choose to become. Kira took her hand. That night on their private balcony, Kieran asked, Any regrets? Lysandra looked toward the shadow fen in the distance. No, because if you'd claimed me 6 years ago, I would have believed I needed you. And I don't. You don't? I don't need you. I choose you. That's infinitely better. She'd been exiled, shattered, rebuilt, tested, claimed. And through it all, she'd learned the essential truth. The person you become in silence, in cold, in moments when no one watches, that's your real self. Everything else is performance. And Lysandra Ashenstrike finally knew exactly who she was. That night, after the moon's circle had emptied and Ashenstrike slept, Lysandra stood alone on the balcony overlooking the Shadowfen. The wind carried the same cold she'd once feared, the same darkness she'd crossed believing it might kill her. It hadn't. Kieran joined her without speaking. He'd learned when silence was safety and when it was cowardice. I used to think love meant shielding, he said quietly, standing in front, deciding what dangers you were allowed to face. Lysandra didn't turn. That wasn't love. That was fear pretending to be mercy. He nodded. And it cost us years. Not wasted ones, she replied. Necessary ones. She thought of the nights she'd nearly frozen, the traps that failed before they worked. The moment she realized survival wasn't something given, it was something learned, something chosen. If you'd claimed me back then, she said, I would have believed I needed you. And now? Now I know I don't. He smiled, not wounded, not threatened, relieved. I don't want to be needed, he said. I want to be chosen. She finally faced him. Good, because that's the only kind of bond that lasts. Below them, the fortress lights burned steady. Servants moved through corridors that would soon teach them how to fight, how to read, how to choose paths beyond silence. The kingdom was changing, not because a king commanded it, but because a woman who had once been invisible refused to remain so. Lysandra had learned the truth most never did. Love isn't proven by how much you endure quietly. Power isn't measured by who protects you without asking. And worth is never granted. It's recognized when you claim it yourself. She had been exiled. She had been silent. She had survived the cold when no one was watching. And because of that, she knew exactly who she was. If this story stayed with you, it's because somewhere inside it you recognized a truth of your own. Stories like this aren't about fantasy. They're about the choices we make when silence feels safer than speaking, and fear feels easier than courage. Stay with the channel for more dark romance tales where desire tests power, love demands bravery, and no one is saved without first choosing themselves.